I can remember the first time I was conducting a therapy session thinking, oh my goodness, like who thinks this is a good idea to allow me to be the person to be, trying to help somebody else out. And, so I feel really lucky that I've had patient and thoughtful mentors throughout my career. And in turn, it's something that I've really made a big component part of how I think of myself as a leader and who I am as a leader. And because I think leadership comes in all sizes, right? I mean, we're leaders in our own families, and when raising our own kids in our own communities. We're leaders at work, and leadership, I think, is about behaving with integrity and being having a lot of emotional intelligence. And I think in today, that emotional intelligence is more critical than ever, right? We have to be aware of how we make others feel in our interactions. And it's, I entirely believe that you can learn painful lessons and do it in an environment that still raises you up.
Welcome back to another episode here on the Hart and Hustle podcast. Most people, they'll talk about legacy, but Patricia's living it over 2 decades in behavioral health, now leading tech innovation at a 120-year-old nonprofit. Let's talk about the Hart, when the Hart meets the hustle journey. Patricia, what was that moment you knew this wasn't just a job, but it was truly a calling, a purpose?
Oh gosh, I fell in love with human services in high school. I was fortunate enough to have a high school that offered a psychology class, and we're going back a little ways here, you can imagine. And it was the first class I can remember ever taking where I just was enthralled and so excited by the content and learned so much. So I knew I'm one of those really fortunate people that knew at an early age what I wanted to do. So I studied psychology in college, and then I was able to study it all the way through, and got my master's degree in social work, and then a doctorate degree in psychology. And right from the very beginning, knew I was meant to be in nonprofits. The spirit of a nonprofit just connects with me. The work ethic, the types of people that are attracted to work in nonprofits. Right? People who just love doing really hard things and get a great deal of personal satisfaction out of helping other people. These are people who know their why, right? You often hear this in industries where people have to find their why. The remarkable thing about nonprofits are that we all know our why. So we wake up every day knowing exactly our why, what's driving us into work. And I would just say that all that stuff resonated with me from an early age. And I just feel super lucky to be in an environment where I know the work that I get to do with my colleagues has a direct and immediate impact upon the lives of individuals and in improving their lives. And it's just, I can't think of anything more exciting to be doing with my time.
I always hear that when anyone's in a nonprofit space is always so excited to truly just be doing the line of work they do. So just yesterday, actually for Mother's Day, I called my mom and she's just venting about work. She's in the healthcare space, and she's like, "Hey, we're moving office," and my mom's 60 years old, and she said, "We're moving office, and I was having to pick up boxes and pack boxes, and the doctors took off, and the other people took off, and your mom's too old. I can't be doing this, X, Y, Z." And it was just so much venting, and I almost wanted to say, "Mom, you should go into the nonprofit space," because my mom is just a giving person. But people seem to be so happier when they can go to work and know that truly they're making a difference in their lives. And that's why I really love the nonprofit space. Even myself being a leader, I didn't understand. I think now as I even get more and more into it, having more and more conversations, truly the impact the nonprofit makes, and not just so much for the community, but for the person that's running it, like mentally.
Yeah.
It allows us to be better versions of ourselves. In a time where we may have imposter syndrome, if you show up to work, that goes away. Because you realize, like, man, there's so many people out there that are dealing with worse situations that I'm dealing with, right? Like, how can I help them at least come to surface level, to be quite frank? Yours is a little different, too. You're at KenCrest, which is a big difference in just your regular day-to-day interactions. Why did you choose this organization? What made you feel like, you know what, I want to be here, I want to make this difference? Why KenCrest?
KenCrest is an incredibly exciting place to work. It's an organization that was started about 120 years ago, and
Mhm.
its mission when it started was to serve the community. So it started as a dispensary for the community at a time when when the society was struggling with outbreaks of TB. And we've evolved a lot over the years, and every evolution has been stamped by a response to societal needs.
Mhm.
So that is, developing housing arrangements for individuals with intellectual disabilities, community-based services for individuals with disabilities. And when I was, looking to partner with a nonprofit, I really wanted to be in a space that was innovative, and invested wholly in their staff and in their workforce. I think, as I said, I think it's, people who work in the nonprofit space are really special individuals. And I wanted to be in an organization that really recognized that. And KenCrest does a remarkable job of involving people at all levels in decision making. And that's a difficult thing to do, right? The larger the organization, that's a more complex thing to do. But
I
the
agree.
realities are that it's the individuals who are providing the direct care, right? Our staff who are providing the direct care to the individuals that we serve, who really can give us the best advice as to
Mhm.
what programs are necessary, how effective the programs are, what we need to be doing more of, and frankly, what we need to be doing less of. So it was KenCrest's deep commitment to growing leaders and educating the workforce that was, I think, the most moving and compelling for me. We also have been a leader in innovation. We do a lot of assistive technology, and being in the healthcare space and being able to do those kinds of interventions, be able to team up with people to look at things like creating smart homes and putting technology into a home to increase somebody's independence. I mean, I can't think of a more exciting thing to do, right? You have individuals who,
Mhm.
where families who thought that their children would never be independent, and then at 30 or 40, we're able to introduce technology that allows them to live independently for maybe the first time in their entire life. I mean, how exciting is that?
It is. Can you actually walk us through some of these smart homes? Like, for those that hear smart homes, what does it actually look like? What does independence really look like now?
Yeah. So KenCrest has we have a whole division dedicated to assistive technology, and we have a pilot smart home that allows individuals just to come to look at it. So they can explore it and determine what technology might be necessary for their loved ones.
Got
But
it.
we also have tech in all of the homes that we provide to our individuals. So we've got a lot of individuals that live in sort of like group settings, 2 or 3 individuals in a home,
Mhm.
with some staff that come in and out of the home to provide support. We also have individuals that are receiving remote support. So they live independently, and they might get some remote coaching. And so some of the resources that we have in those homes are things like microwaves that read the barcodes and know exactly how to cook the food so that it's prepared properly.
Wow.
We have individuals who have physical limitations, and we have toilets that not only flush and bidets, but that also have a drying capability, right? And these are difficult things to ask for help with, even from
Mhm.
a loved one, right? Even from a family member, but certainly from a stranger. So having these kinds of supports in homes increases the autonomy of our individuals, and it helps them maintain their integrity. We have automatic med dispensing. We, of course, have motion sensors so that if an individual were living independently and had mobility issues and perhaps fell, we could find out in a short period of time if there was no movement in the home, and we can send somebody in to check on them, or we could remote in and check to see if they're okay. Sensors on ovens if there's no activity going on, so that we can make sure we're supporting individuals so we don't have something, God forbid, like a fire. Lots of people use ring technology,
Mhm.
right? Or locks on the doors that are that are remote. So those things are becoming a little more standard. But what we're trying to do is really focus on the kinds of technology that increases a person's independence and gives them the autonomy that they want and that they deserve.
I love this. And I love this because when I speak to the leaders that are in this space, we know what it looked like years ago. It didn't look like this, right? It was actually a very sad thing to think of and sometimes even just shunned away. Now we're putting them in homes and they're living normal lives as they always should have. So I can imagine why this makes you feel happy when you wake up, right? Like, oh my God, we're giving people the opportunity to live life normally. A lot of times people look at these with individuals with disabilities and won't even talk to them, right? Just automatically just see them differently. But you guys at KenCrest are realizing, no, they're humans just like us. And whatever we got to do to, you know, make them live that human experience that we all live. I'll tell you one, I actually spoke to a leader last week and they have a manufacturing center. And every single person that works at that center has a disability. And and when it comes to like even machine maneuvering, that they made certain things, whether it's packaging or how to move this machine, they made it so that anyone of them can actually move these machines. And I'm like, man, how cool. They now have delis where a lot of those individuals work at the delis because they're realizing that these people are humans. They want to do something in life. How can you help them get to that point? So kudos to you and the work that you're doing because it's not easy work, but I can only imagine it's 100% fulfilling work. So thank you for it. I want to get into that technology innovation because you mentioned how you guys are, that's your thing, right? That's your kind of your bread and butter. But KenCrest isn't just using AI. You're teaching people how to use it, right? Or even just technology in itself. What made you so fearless about innovation when some of the world is at fear that is replacing a job?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that KenCrest has always been a pioneer in many different spaces.
Hmm.
And, I think it's an organization that has a legacy of embracing change, which has allowed us to be able to think beyond how we currently operate and what we currently do to look at the needs of the people that we're here and committed to serve. And I think in its truest form, right, if we really committed to meeting the needs of other people, we've got to evolve at the rate that society is evolving, right?
Yeah.
So that we can remain relevant and helpful ultimately. And, people are living in a world where there is tremendous accessibility to technology, and being able to harness that innovation and construct homes that where somebody can go in and even just spend a couple of hours and practice using the technology decreases their fears, right? So it's not only just getting our workforce in a space where they're comfortable using the technology, and we've put a lot of time and energy into that, and our workforce is incredibly adept and comfortable using the technology. But it can be scary for individuals and their families, right? I mean, when you have an individual that's been living with you and now they're an adult and they've always been dependent upon somebody else providing support and supervision, it can be scary to think about them living independently with only remote supports. And so we work really hard to partner with families and community stakeholders so that it can be a comfortable transition and that we're very responsive to the worries and concerns about families and their loved ones, allowing for, accessing the technology, using it in brief periods of time, even loaning out the technology to practice using it and creating comfort with it becomes a critical component to success. Uh,
I love it. I love it. And when we talk about AI, I think one of the spaces that a lot of nonprofits or those in healthcare spaces are not using it in is really in the how we continue to engage with the community, whether that's really our internal community or external communities. That could be our donors, that could be our residents. Have you guys figured out how to kind of get into that space so that it becomes that number one resources, even 3, 6 months, but also continue that engagement piece? Have you guys got into that space?
Yeah, so KenCrest has a national certification as an assistive technology provider. In
Wow.
addition to that, we partner with state agencies to provide assistive technology in 3 different states: Pennsylvania, Connecticut, and Delaware. And we are having multiple conversations with lots of entities about training up their workforces, or partnering on projects that expand the application of assistive technology. So it's been a really exciting space, and there's so much opportunity out there because of everyone's collective desire for inclusion and
Hmm.
you know, trying to create lives that are the most meaningful, right? We all want to be able to live our best lives, and um, allowing the individual to define for themselves what their best life is a critical component to their happiness.
Yeah.
So we recognize that in order to be able to do that, we have to partner broadly. So not only with external stakeholders and other organizations that maybe are able to do things that we're not able to do, but then there's things that we can do to offset on their side. So those partnerships have been very exciting for us, and then it gives us sort of a broader audience, right? A bigger conversation, which is
Yes.
ultimately where we want to be. We're happy to provide the services, but we're just deeply committed to other organizations in a similar space being able to learn from the kinds of things we've been able to do and the possibilities we've been able to make real for
Mhm.
individuals and their families.
Hey, real quick, if you enjoyed the podcast, we first want to say thank you. And we also just want to give you a little insight of what we're up to at FRANSiS. Some don't even realize that we're working with organizations to help them use AI to create that real human communication experiences, whether that's actually supporting your families, those patients, or the entire community. We're actually creating tech that connects. Check it out, francis.ai. I love that. Yeah, I think when it comes to AI, I think that's this cool thing about it is that there's so many different aspects to really utilize AI. I'm such a big advocate now. You asked me 2 years ago, I'm like, it is what it is, right? Like I wasn't using it, but for the last year, actually using it at a very, up to me, low level because I'm using only ChatGPT. But now starting to create automations and seeing some of the unique things that are happening, where people can communicate at an SMS level with a human body per se. It seems like human, but it's really just giving you all the insight that your business that you've put into this data box may have. So you don't have to have someone picking up phones, because I'm a big believer at times we have people doing work that, yes, is helpful, but it's if we can automate it, if we can AI that part, we can have more people actually helping our individuals that need the assistance,
Yeah.
right? We don't need picking up phone calls and giving you resources. So I love that we're kind of in spaces where we're seeing a lot of these different things, and that the organizations, especially now with what's happening in our country, with funds being cut and people not knowing what's next and how to pivot because they're maybe 85% of their income is for Medicaid from Medicaid.
Right.
So all these things that are really kind of happening within the world, AI is kind of playing a role. Okay, well, we might have to do budget cuts and get rid of some things, but we can implement these. Is there anything that you feel now that KenCrest could probably win from if implementing an AI bot on the website? I don't know what that looks like for KenCrest. Any ideas?
Any ideas about?
Just how AI, where you guys can actually implement it today to make a difference, but you guys haven't got there yet.
We are, I think this space around maximizing the remote supports can be really critical. So we talk about it a lot with the IDD population. But honestly, as we're all aging, I think it can play a significant role in supporting individuals to remain in their communities, in their homes with loved ones. So we're having to utilize less those care facilities, right? Care facilities for the elderly, for example. There's so many spaces where it can bridge the gap between some of the medical needs and the medical communication that's necessary in the community, or people who are not ambulatory, who we're going back and forth to their medical appointments is difficult. We're partnering right now so that we can really maximize the telehealth platform to be able to create less disruption in people's lives. It's an undertaking for people who are wheelchair bound, for example, to get into medical appointments and sit in long lines in hospitals. So, I appreciate that it's not a space that we aren't in yet. It's a space that we are in. I think these are all spaces that have just tremendous potential. I think the other thing that's potentially exciting and isn't a space that we are in yet is more like it's like a matching, right? I mean, there's a lot that goes on these days about people meeting other people on the internet, and there's certainly
Yeah.
advantages and disadvantages to that. But for a population of individuals who've never really lived independently and don't have a broad social network, to be able to go on an internet and match with a roommate who also might have some special needs, so that they can form meaningful
Cool.
relationships and then live in an independent environment where they're getting remote supports, I think is a different way of doing things, right? We've got kids who are leaving for college who are looking for roommates, and matching for roommates as they're leaving for college, but we're not necessarily looking at this as an opportunity for the individuals who've always lived with their parents and are maybe 35 and 40 years old and can live independently and are also wanting those kinds of meaningful peer relationships. So I just think that there's a lot of exciting ways that this can be done. Obviously, it's important to have guardrails in technology, to keep
Hmm.
everybody safe. But I think there's tremendous potential to increase, and redefine what is a meaningful life for people.
That is so cool. You started to go into the dating scene of apps, and I'm like, I know it. I haven't been on it, and I can't even imagine. But I do know you swipe left, swipe right. But it makes sense in the world of what you're talking about, right? Where people can find those roommates. That's actually such a game changer for those that are looking for the roommates, and you could just kind of read a little quick on them and figure out if you guys match. That is actually really, really cool. I haven't heard that yet, so I want to talk about your leadership skills. You're a person that you've helped others grow. You know how to develop other leaders. But what about you? Like, what's the hardest leadership lesson you've had to learn, and who was the one pouring into you when you're pouring into everybody else?
Oh gosh, I've really been very, very lucky in this space. I have been fortunate enough to work with leaders who've always invested in me. They've invested in my learning. They've given me opportunities. They've stood by me and held my hand when I failed.
Mm,
And all the while saying important lessons, you're learning important lessons, and you'll get it right next time, right?
mhm.
So it's been, um, I think that that's the thing that's been the most meaningful for me, is from a very early space in my career. I had people who believed in me until I could get to a space where I really believed in myself, right? I mean, I think people starting out in their careers are always a little uncomfortable and you're not really sure of your skill set. I can remember the first time I was conducting a therapy session thinking, oh my goodness, like who thinks this is a good idea to allow me to be the person to be, trying to help somebody else out. And, um, so I feel really lucky that I've had patient and thoughtful mentors throughout my career, and in turn, it's something that I've really made a big component part of how I think of myself as a leader and who I am as a leader, and because I think leadership comes in all sizes, right? I mean, we're leaders in our own families, and when raising our own kids in our own communities, we're leaders at
Right.
work, and leadership, I think, is about, behaving with integrity and being, having a lot of emotional intelligence. And I think in today, that emotional intelligence is more critical than ever, right? We have to be aware of how we make others feel in our interactions. And it's, I entirely believe that you can learn painful lessons and do it in an environment that still raises you up. And I think leaders have to allow people to fail. Not that you're not gonna jump in and be helpful, right? But we can't fear failure. And I think this is how KenCrest has been such an innovative leader over time, is that we haven't feared failing, because if you're trying and you're trying, um, to make change, it's not all going to go well.
Mhm.
And the same has been true for me as a leader. I've been able to be, a mentor. I've been able to, teach at the college level and, take on interns early in their career. And honestly, that's some of the most exciting stuff I've done. Working with interns, people new in their career, their excitement is contagious and they just
Mhm.
do such a great job of thinking outside of the box, right? I mean, sometimes when we go on in our careers, you have to really work for your world not to become
Yeah.
narrow. And the super exciting thing about kids coming out of college and grad school is the world is so huge. And, I think I've honestly over my time learned more from the interns that I've worked with or the practicum students, who just aren't limited. Their fields a vision aren't limited.
Yeah.
And that's been, I think, a really fun space.
I've always been a fan of working with young individuals. Even from when I was young, like I was a 19-year-old general manager. And even though I was young, I love to work with those that never had a job before because I feel like those were the best, or they just came out of school, right? Because they do have this fresh perspective, and no one's really there's great leaders and there's bad leaders, right? And sometimes they come with this bad leadership perspective or what this may look like. And I was always just excited to pour into them the correct ways and know that some of them, I can only imagine, some of them still come to you and say, I remember what you said this many years ago. And when you hear that, you're like, man, that's so cool. For us, it's just doing what we do every single day, right? Leadership kind of lives in us. You mentioned about being a mom earlier about your kids, right? You're leading your kids like you've been doing the work for years now, even before the kids, but even more when you become a parent, you truly are a leader. It's not they're not probably listening to you, but they're watching every single step that you're doing. Being part of KenCrest, I can imagine your kids are excited. Hopefully they think that mom's a damn near superhero. Look what mom is doing for the world. If they don't, the kids got to get on it. I had to throw it in there. I know they're watching, so I love it. What does your kids, when you talk about leadership, what skills does your kids bring you in leadership?
Oh gosh. I would, I would tell you my kids are my biggest inspiration, and I know a lot of people say that. And I guess how I want to speak about that is that I don't think there's a harder job than being a parent, and
Mhm.
being able to do it well and thoughtfully is incredibly complicated. And I've got three kids, and two teenagers and one in her early 20s. And they are incredibly articulate kids who are not scared to have tough conversations, right?
Love it.
They're able to respectfully say, I disagree with you and I don't see the world that way. And I
Yeah.
think that those are qualities, I mean, of the, I could talk all day about I've got three great kids and I'm super lucky. But it's, we live in a world that requires courageous leadership, and you don't just become a leader at 40 or 50. You become a leader as you're living your life, right? We need
Hmm.
leaders on the playground at 5 years old. We need leaders in middle school. And if I, of all the things that I hope to have done in my career and in my life, is help anybody that I've interacted with recognize that you have opportunities throughout your day, every single day, to be the kind of leader that you want to be. And I hope that my kids are just living out those opportunities, right? If they're seeing something in their environments that they're not comfortable with, speaking up and saying, hold on, wait a second, let's have a conversation about this.
Yeah.
Because I think that's how we're going to be growing the future of leaders. I think that those conversations that every parent is having at home and teachers are having, right, at very early ages, is what's going to shape the futures of the KenCrests of the world, and all of the other organizations that are striving to do the right thing in environments where sometimes talking about the right thing is hard, and certainly doing the right thing is even harder.
I'm sitting here. I have a 2-year old. Oh, sorry. I have a 4-year old and a 1-year old, almost 2-year old. And my 4-year old's at a point where it's like, no, I'm not doing that. No, dad or mom. First of all, I just want to kind of go back. You said parents is the hardest job. I think being a mom is the hardest job. Okay, because let's be honest. I have both my kids. They love me, but mom first. And my wife's a stay-at-home mom, so I got to give her. Anytime I give the ability to give her the praise, I'm gonna give her that praise. 4 years in, and I couldn't do the job that she does, and not at all. But what you mentioned is how your kids are saying, "No, I don't see it that way." Like being able to really speak and be confident in how they believe in. I didn't have that growing up. So you mentioned that, and I'm like, man, that is you teaching kids how to be a leader and how to use their voices and how to not just be another individual in the cycle of work, but hey, when things are wrong, it's okay for you to say it, but it's how you say it.
Yep.
Because a lot of times is we say the right things. It's just maybe we said it wrong in the wrong tone and things like that. So when you said that, I'm like, maybe I just teach my daughter it's okay to say no,
Yeah.
but know why,
Yeah.
right? And how to say no without the attitude or come too aggressive. So I love it. I love that you're kind of already instilling this in your kids, and you're clearly by the way you're talking that your kids are kind of taking that in. And one of the biggest things I tell my wife is I want to be able to build relationship, the open door that anything happens. If when you're 20, you mentioned your 20-year-old daughter, when she's out in the world, God forbid something happens, it's okay to call me at 1, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, right? Being able to build that because, and I believe that now with our youth and the different generation, they are like that. Believe me, we don't have to tell them. They just pop it out like that at this point. So I love that you're in this space because it shows also that you're a great mom, but you're also a great leader. So continue doing, the amazing things that you're doing.
Thank you.
But I want to talk about in a space where new CEOs are coming in. What gets you most excited about where KenCrest is truly headed with just new leadership, new, I can imagine, energy, a new set of eyes?
Yeah, we're in the middle of one of those transitions here. We've had our very, very long time CEO who retiring, and her legacy is just amazing, right? I mean, talk about a leader who's really invested in the learning and growing of other people. This is a woman who, despite an unbelievably busy schedule, somehow finds time to have weekly town halls with the entire workforce to answer questions and provide education, and has spent hours and hours educating the workforce on the changes in the federal government and what the budget implications would be for spaces like ours. It's remarkable. And we're really lucky that her successor is a woman who has been committed to KenCrest for a long time and shares much of her vision, and is just really excited to take on the challenges that nonprofits are going to be facing over the next several years, and thinks innovatively about how to get that done with technology. A lot of what we've been building on has been helping to prepare us for these next couple of years. So it's been really inspiring to be in this place, and because of the way KenCrest works towards succession planning and educating their workforce and really growing leaders, they're able to make shifts through these difficult times and this transition in a way that holds on to the spirit of what the organization has always been here to do, with clarity of vision of where we're going to be in the next 5 years and 10 years. So it's, these times get a little uncertain, I think. They are ripe with opportunity. And I feel lucky to be here at this juncture in my career to support these leaders in sort of realizing the vision for the organization over the next several years. It's a fun time to be here.
When you were telling me about the transition, I was hoping that I was getting some breaking news that you were going to be the next CEO. Is that ever an idea of yours to go and run a nonprofit at that level? Or are you okay doing what you do on a day to day? What does that look like for you in the future?
It's such an interesting question, because I can tell you throughout my entire career, I've never really looked at an opportunity and said, oh my God, that's definitely what I want to do. What I've always wanted to do is just have the biggest footprint of impact in whatever space I can do that well. So titles and those kinds of things have never been something that has been a driving variable for me. It's been, where can I have the most impact? How can I use my skills in a way that's going to help me feel really good at the end of the day, right? I want to go home and be able to look in the mirror and be really proud of the work that I've done. And so I think in terms of where I want to go or what I want to do, I want to be in environments where I am inspired, where I'm encouraged to take appropriate risks, and I can have a meaningful impact upon the lives of the individuals and the families that we're here to support. And whatever that looks like, as long as at the end of the day, I can feel good about the things I'm doing, I'm all in.
I love it. And for those that are listening, what role do you play with KenCrest at the moment?
I am the vice president of programs, so I'm responsible for all of the services that we provide to adults across the Northeast region.
I love it. And how long you been doing that line of work for KenCrest?
So I've only been with KenCrest actually a short while, but I've been in the human services field. I was with another organization for 25 years, and then I
Wow.
transitioned over to KenCrest within the last year, actually.
Okay, so this is fun for you then, right?
It
Like,
really
look what you're
is.
doing. We're on podcast. I can only imagine you making moves now. You're excited. Anytime, it's funny. I was telling my mom, she's like, I would love to say something, right? Back to what I was mentioned earlier, but she's like, I'm within my first 90 days because she transferred to a different location,
Okay.
and she's like, I'm trying to be on my best behavior, But usually those first couple of months are the exciting time. I mean, that first year is the exciting time because especially as you mentioned about the leaders that you had and now are going to have as well, is that they're listening to you and then they care. It's so cool when you work in an establishment like that,
Yeah.
especially after 25 years and going to something very different, very uncomfortable. But that's what excites
Yes.
great leaders. So I imagine that you're just so excited because within that year, you've seen change. You've seen some of the things that maybe you want to implement for some years now being implemented. You see people with the same amount of energy and purpose that you have. So I love it. I love this for you. So yeah, VP right now is where you're at. I can imagine, a few years from now, we're talking a whole different conversation. Um, we start to wrap this up, but I ask you for those that what would you say to someone actually who wants to make an impact but doesn't know where to start? 'Cause I think that's where the issue lies. People don't know that we're not just asking for donations. We don't just need money. We need resources. We need talents. We need, it could be people that knows technology, people that can deliver workshops. It could be so many different things on how you can actually get incorporated into nonprofits. But KenCrest, to be exact, how could people get involved?
Yeah, I mean, so KenCrest has, we're heavily dependent upon, donors and volunteers, and there's always ways in which people can be helpful. Whether or not it's their resources or people that they can connect us with to be able to continue to move services forward. We're always interested in having those kinds of conversations with anybody. And I think that at a time when there's so much uncertainty, a lot of people are looking for ways that they can sort of pitch in and help. And in our region, KenCrest, we have events where you can come and donate your time or your resources, and we're always happy to have those conversations with people. And you can go on our website kencrest.org, and you can find lots of ways to get involved and stay connected with us. And and we're always grateful to have people involved.
All right. Listen, I can't believe it already, but we're at the end of this episode. However, before we finish, we got to actually get into that hot seat. Is the blind question time? Are you excited about the blind question?
I'm excited about the blind question.
All right. After this, you get to also ask your blind question to the next leader. But our last leader asked, what's something about you no one would actually guess just by looking at your resume?
That nobody would guess looking at my resume.
Yeah. Like for
Um,
me, I love wrestling. I'm a plant dad. People will never know those type of things. But what is that surprise that people were like, no way?
so I am a triathlete. I've competed in Ironman.
Did you? One? How many? How many?
So I only did one full, but I've done 9 halves.
Wow. You're right. Are you still doing them today?
Yeah, I stay pretty active. Uh,
I tell myself I want to do one. I'm staying active. I'm 35 years old. And I was like, I got to, because it goes back to the kids, right? I want to just show my daughter that whatever the hell you want to go do, you go do it. And so I do at one point, never even signed up for one, don't know what they actually entail. But, maybe I had to hit you up to figure out how I kind of get involved and what's the training look like.
I
I love
got
this.
you. I got you.
I love this. So let's talk about your blind question. What is your blind question to the next leader?
All right. So you mentioned heroes earlier, and it's funny because my question is about that, because I feel fortunate, right, that I work with so many people who really are your everyday superheroes. So my question is: everyone has a superpower. What is yours, and what made you realize that was your superpower?
Ooh, that's a very amazing question. Yeah, I'm gonna tell you what mine is, just because it was so good. I never answered them, but it's really my voice.
I could
And
see
when
that.
did I notice? It was probably when I was 30 years old, believe it or not. I grew up with people making fun of my voice. I would create content from my early 20s, never go back and watch it because I was my worst critic. So I would just eat them alive and just, it would just bother me. So I couldn't watch my own videos till 30 years old, and it was really taking on a job. And that's why I believe that every job we take, what it's in it for me. So I took a job as a facilitator. Never thought I'd be a facilitator, first of all, but I was working for the airline industry. The opportunity presented itself. And I was like, I thought I would never teach kids. But God had a different plan. He said, "You're teaching adults." Um, but I said, "What do I learn?" And it was how to become a better speaker, how to be more confident in front of crowds. And mind you, I've spoken in front of I've spoken on stages and stuff like that, but I still wasn't confident. I now feel like I'm very confident. And then someone mentioned to me, well, I think also just having people say, "You're so good at what you do," or people get chills when I'm just talking to them about life, or how much do you charge for consulting? Like, and this is just by me talking, not realizing that God given me this gift of my voice. And then I did Undercover Boss a few years ago, but I still speak to the chief development officer. And recently, within the last year and a half, he also met, which kind of brought it back up and allowed me to really kind of think about it, was he says, Ephraim, I've seen you do so much in your life, building brands and helping others build their brands. And you know, I share my story all the time on sexual abuse and adoption. I help others share their stories, still not realizing my voice is that thing, that superpower. And he says, man, when do you start to teach people everything? When do you start to take the advice that you're teaching people? Because people teach best what they need the most. You tell people to know their worth. When do you know yours? And that, and when he said that, I'm like, you're right. When do I know my worth? Right? When do I realize that my superpowers are truly what I need to be tapping into? My voice. And look what the hell I'm doing.
There you go.
You know, like this is pretty cool. So that was actually really good. I can't wait to hear what someone else's question is. I want to ask you what it is, but I'll ask you offline what you think it is, because that's it. That's the end of it. Guys, if you guys are still watching this far, we thank you so much. Actually, can we talk about social medias? What's the website? What is the social media? Where can people follow you guys?
Yeah. So our website is kencrest.org. And there's a ton of information about what we do, how we do what we do, ways to be involved, ways to donate. So look us up. We'd love to hear from you.
I love it. Well, Patricia, you have been amazing. You've knocked out the park. We got to learn so much more about KenCrest, but also you as a leader. I'm a big believer that, yes, we should definitely highlight resources, but let's highlight those people that are sitting at desks, behind the scenes, sometimes in the office, but truly doing the work that we should all be doing, right? Find yourself in an organization. I say this every single time. There are nonprofits out there that probably everything you do on a day-to-day basis, they need you, right? You just don't know because you haven't looked it up. Nonprofits need the talent, whether it's 1 hour, 5 hours a week. It goes so far. So we thank you for watching another great episode here with KenCrest and Patricia and what they're doing, some of the amazing things. Check out their website. This has been the Heart and Hustle podcast. We'll catch you guys in the next episode. Talk to you later.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.